7 dead now. There was a public appeal to help raise a £30,000 reward, and a television appeal directly to the murderer.
I want to appeal to you to come forward and give yourself up. I mean, we may be prostitutes, but we still have a life. I think you've taken enough lives already.
I want to talk to you this evening not as a psychiatrist, because I've never met you, and because probably a psychiatrist is the last kind of person you want to see. I do want to ask you to give yourself up.
You've no future while you're on the run, and in the end you will be caught. And the longer you wait, the worse it will be.
I want you to pick up the phone, not tomorrow, not next week, but now, and tell the police who you are.
Give yourself up, now.
But he had already killed again. Another victim lay undiscovered on wasteland in Bradford. A woman who died here 10 days before Helen Ritker. Her name was Yvonne Pearson. She had gone missing from her home in Bradford in January 1978. Her decomposed body turned up under a settee 2 months later on Easter Sunday.
Mrs. Pearson's death was the most violent of the series up to that point. The skull was stove in. Whatever had been used, it was not a hammer. There were no stab wounds of the chest, but on the other hand, there were bruising injuries to both the chest and trunk, which extended internally. Could have been somebody kneeling on the chest, could have been somebody stamping on the chest. But, as I say, these were serious injuries, not just serious head injuries, but the full weight of the assailant had been used in some way from the neck down as well.
You know, I would have thought the prostitutes would have been on the run. I would have thought they would have been leaving this area in dozens and dozens. There's no real evidence to support that that is so. They are staying and they are still walking the streets, and unfortunately they aren't being very intelligent about it.
Trevor Lapish was the new head of Bradford CID.
The man that was involved in this series had to be a complete sadist. I mean, he was picking victims at random, didn't matter whether they were innocent girls, prostitutes, or whatever. But the things that he was doing were horrific injuries. You might think in your own mind he was a madman. But then, of course, you looked at the facts and looked what sort of evidence he was leaving behind, and he wasn't a bad man at all. He was a cool, calculating individual that was getting a great thrill in what he was doing, a sexual thrill. And the real thing that bugged you was that you were getting no further forward with it.
While Yvonne Pearson's body still lay undetected, police headquarters had received an intriguing letter with a Sunderland postmark. Writing personally to George Oldfield, the letter said, "I'm sorry I cannot give my name for obvious reasons. I am the Ripper. Warn whores to keep off streets. Old slut next time, I hope." But it was what he didn't say that worried Trevor Lapish.
What disturbed me, and in fact convinced me completely, that if in fact the perpetrator of Yvonne Pearson was the person who'd done all the rest, Yvonne should have been in that letter. She wasn't. And I had grave doubts that in fact the perpetrator of the crimes was the same person who was sending the letter to George Oldfield, and let Mr. Oldfield know my thoughts on the matter.
But George Oldfield had a compelling reason to take the letter from Sunderland seriously. "Up to number 8 now," the letter said. "You say 7, but remember Preston 75. Joan Harrison, murdered in Preston in 1975, 3 weeks after the first Ripper killing. The 26-year-old was found battered to death at these garages. A bite mark on her breast showed a gap in her killer's teeth. The motive looked like sex or robbery, so police had not included it in the Ripper series, till now. Over the next 15 months, police heard 4 times from the man in Sunderland claiming to be the Ripper. No fingerprints, but forensic scientists got a chemical reaction to saliva. He had licked one of the envelopes. Further tests revealed the saliva came from someone with the rare blood group B secretor, shared by only 6% of the population, including the man who left semen in the body of Joan Harrison. The link between the Ripper, the letters from Sunderland, and the Preston murder seemed complete. This forensic evidence helped to convince the police that the letter writer and the Ripper were the same person. But when, much later, Peter Sutcliffe's blood was tested, he had a different blood type, B non-secretor. So someone else wrote those letters, someone else killed Joan Harrison, crimes which have never been solved, crimes which led the police disastrously astray.
We thought the letters were genuine. He had, first of all, mentioned Harrison. He had mentioned a number of murders, and the next one would be an old bag in Manchester, or words to that effect. The next one was.
The Yorkshire Ripper did choose an older victim when he crossed the Pennines again in May 1978. Her name was Vera Millward, and she was the mother of 7 children. The 9th victim was a 41-year-old prostitute, a sick woman with only one lung. She died in the grounds of Manchester Royal Infirmary, where she had once been a patient. The attack was typical: darkness, a deserted space, a hammer to the head, interference with the clothes, stab wounds to the body.
This was not frenzied, this was methodical. The wounds were inflicted in a patterned fashion, and then, and again this emerged increasingly frequently, the instrument was inserted through the same wound. It was being pushed through the skin wound, partially withdrawn, so you had tracks going from the same hole, but in different directions on the inside. There was method all the way through this, concentration, thought, and care.
The net is closing. I'm anxious that we catch you before you've time to add another death to the appalling catalogue that you've already got to your credit.
George Oldfield now sent hundreds of police onto the streets, a top-secret operation to track down the Ripper among all the men who went looking for prostitutes. Undercover police tracked 500,000 car movements through 6 northern cities, looking for men who went looking for prostitutes in more than one red light district. Officers used the primitive new police national computer, not a database, just a long, long list of car numbers and their owners.
It was spewing out numbers literally by the thousands, and they were in no order other than the time order of appearing in the prostitute areas. So if we wanted to check up and get the information about the movements of one particular vehicle, we had a huge roll, rather like a long 15-inch wide toilet roll, to roll out literally the whole of the way across the Millgarth incident room floor, and people on their hands and knees searching for one particular vehicle. We were utterly amazed, as the figures have shown, with the number of vehicles of men who were punting in prostitute areas. With each one of those, we had a potential divorce. Some men were even taking the wife's car to go and seek prostitutes. And so the wife was the first person we had to see to find out who was driving. When we were briefing the troops who were doing this inquiry, we stressed throughout our favourite phrase was Softly, Softly Catch Your Monkey.